So welcome to another video here at Back to Classics, and today we're going to discuss something very special, this 2017 Aston Martin Rapide S. So welcome on board the Aston Martin Rapide, and being underway in a car like this immediately gives you the idea that you're underway with something really special. We can go over the interior in a minute, of course, but it is a very nice place to be. That 6-liter V12 is present always, which is also a very nice feature of this car. But let's start with a little bit of background behind this model and why it came about. Back in 2010, when Aston Martin launched the Rapide, it was just about on its own again after quite a long time in Ford ownership. The CEO at the time, Mr. Ulrich Bez, of German origin, he envisioned a line of cars for Aston Martin in order to be on its own as an independent car manufacturer. And for that he devised sort of a standard platform, the VH platform, that was the basis for all new models. Of course, the DB9 as the most famous and most numerous produced. So it was a sort of a modular chassis idea in order to easily or more easily make new models. And with that in mind, the Rapide came to market in 2010. Of course, also being part of a sort of newly developed market niche where high-end manufacturers were making 4-seater sports cars. One that obviously springs to mind is the Maserati Quattroporte, of which the 5th generation was then available, but also the Porsche Panamera, obviously, which proved to be very successful from its launch in 2009. So I think Aston Martin thought to themselves, well, that's a corner of the market we like some action to as well. And that is why the Aston Martin Rapide as a 4-door saloon, but more on that later, was first envisioned and later launched to the market in 2010. Now Aston Martin, being Aston Martin, of course has to do that in a British stylish fashion, and no other car in this department, in the 4-door sports car department from that era, is as elegant and as beautiful to look at as this one. You could argue about the Maserati Quattroporte, which is a beautiful car, of course, but this is styled in a completely different way. Sort of like a DB9 stretched to where it actually can fit 2 extra doors in the back, but that's about it. If you look at the curves, the shape, and we'll go over that in a minute, I think in design language, this car is really setting it apart from the Maserati Quattroporte, and especially the Porsche Panamera, because that first initial Panamera, I mean, look at it. Calling it a shitting dog would be a bit too much perhaps, but I also just did. But that said, this car is beautiful from every angle. If you look at the curves, the shape of the rear, it is beautiful. It's a sculpture on wheels. And in that sense, it's quite remarkable and unique even for the era, but also for a 4-door sports car, in fact. That did mean, however, that Aston Martin needed to compromise a little bit, quite a lot, on the interior space. Especially in the rear, it is cramped, as we will show you in a minute. So the Aston Martin Rapide, with that, true phenomenon in the sense that it prioritizes beauty over practicality. And that for a 4-door saloon was quite remarkable, wouldn't you say? But it also meant that perhaps it was not the most popular model. If you compare it with the production numbers of the Porsche Panamera, this car is hardly sold at all. Even if you compare it to the DB9, which sold about 22,000 units across its lifespan, this nearly managed 9,000 if at most. And that is the Rapide S, and the very special AMR that was produced over the course of its lifetime. So it wasn't really a success for Aston Martin, perhaps not the success they've hoped for. So yes, this car is a little bit of a split personality. On the one hand, it's trying to be a practical 4-door saloon, but on the other hand, it's a true Aston Martin in the sense that it's so elegant and beauty And of course that wonderful 6-liter V12 up front, making it truly fast. So in that sense you could probably see it as a more classic 2+2 instead of a really 4-seater, which makes it a little difficult to compare it directly to a car like the Maserati Quattroporte or Porsche Panamera. This really stands out on its own. Now Aston Martin officially is named Aston Martin Lagonda Limited, and that is because they also have the brand Lagonda, which used to be their mark for the bigger saloon cars. So why was this sold as an Aston Martin and not as an Lagonda? Because this is not meant as a large saloon car. It is a 2+2 tourer, which is why it is sold as an Aston Martin and not as a Lagonda. Lagonda later on had the Tariff, a car that was produced in very low numbers. I believe about 150 units were made, and that was a much larger saloon car, and that was sold as a Lagonda. So the idea behind this really is a bit more practical DB9. And in that sense, it delivers, because it is a true grand tourer with just 2 extra doors and 2 bucket seats in the rear. That's a lot of power. Unfortunately, we have some British weather, but not to worry, as we have a factory umbrella fitted here. Lovely. Let's talk about this particular example. Open the boot of what is effectively a sort of a hatchback. I am absolutely completely cramped. That all speaks to the schizophrenic nature of this car. Very nice, very luxurious. The feel is absolutely beautiful. If you touch on the throttle, it becomes a whole different animal, as we will now demonstrate.